is now my pleasure to introduce to the podium Mark Wright from Q13 Fox News, who will handle the details of our debate. Mark.
Thank you, President Nancy. After hearing Carl talk, I'm glad I have some carrots and beets in the ground up in Ferndale. You know where Ferndale is, you got my joke. Farm country. I'd like two of the speakers to please come up to the podium at this time. President Nancy, fellow Rotarians and guests, thank you so much for being here. It's my pleasure to moderate today's debate. I hope by the end of our program that we have a much better understanding of education in our state and where the two candidates stand on the issues. I think most of us would agree that educating our children is one of the most important things a society can do. But the devil, as we all know, is in the details. How do we teach our kids? How do we measure whether they're learning? How do we pay for that education? Both of these candidates have grappled with those issues for decades now. It is safe to say these two did not fall off the turnip truck in Ferndale when it comes to knowing their stuff on education. I'm encouraged by that. Dr. Terry Bergeson has held the office of Superintendent of Public Instruction since January of 1997. She has worked her entire career in education, first as a teacher, then as a school counselor, before becoming an administrator and later head of the Washington State Commission on Student Learning. Randy Dorn also has deep roots in education. He began as an elementary school teacher and a principal, and later served as a state representative in Olympia, chairing the House Committee on K-12 Education. Please give a warm round of applause to our two guests today. Okay, our format today is fairly simple. Each candidate will have up to 4 minutes for an opening statement. Up to 4 minutes. Don't feel like you have to use it. But up to 4 minutes. I'm going to ask some questions of my own. During that portion, the candidates will have 90 seconds to respond with a 30-second rebuttal from the other. And then we're going to take questions from you in the audience. I really want to make sure we have enough time to hear from you to make sure that your concerns and questions are answered. And then we'll have a 90-second closing statement from each candidate. This is kind of TV time. It's a little bit condensed. So I appreciate you taking part under those parameters. Okay, so the coin toss decided that Terry Bergeson will go first and Randy Dorn will go second.
Thank you very much, Mark, and happy birthday to our honorees today. And thank you, Carl, for the clearest explanation I've heard of the mess we're in. But my name is Terry Bergeson, and I have been in education from the time I was 20 years old, and I grew up on Cape Cod and started teaching school in a little community called Wareham off of Cape Cod. And I am now 66. I just had my birthday several days ago, and I have been in education through the whole course of my career and my life. I love young people. I love public education. I love learning, and I like to make things work better. In my early career in Wareham and in Bethel, Alaska with Eskimo students and on the east side of Tacoma, I've worked with children from all backgrounds and found the strength in those young people regardless of their poverty levels, their ethnicity, their language background, that kids are amazing and they have the capacity to go way beyond what we believe in them. And so when I had the opportunity to become part of education reform in the state, I jumped at it. Because about 15 years ago, the global competition in this country began to really rear its head very, very strongly. And business and community leaders that were doing global work understood that. People like Frank Schrontz and John Ellis joined forces with the governor and with a group of Republican and Democratic legislators and a number of education leaders because our students were getting a mediocre education in comparison to what they had to be prepared for in that global marketplace and society. And they came together on the Governor's Education Reform Commission to solve that problem. The result of their work together was to create a revolutionary policy that said all children in our state can and should be able to learn to much higher standards. And they put in their proposal a very plain theory of action. Number one, we have very clear, strong state learning goals. Number two, we've operationalized those goals into essential academic learning requirements and grade level expectations, essentially academic standards. We had as part of the legislation the requirement to build an assessment system to measure progress of students against those goals. And we did that, and that's how the WASL was born. But it was a criterion measure, measuring students' progress on the ability to read with comprehension, to inquire scientifically, to reason mathematically. And the result of that policy and the subsequent passage of that legislation by the Washington State Legislature is the fact that Washington State has gone in implementing that, and I was the implementer with the Commission on Student Learning of putting the standards and the assessment and the early accountability system together. As a result of that intentional focus of our schools, we have gone from the middle of the pack academically as a public school system to the top of the nation. We have had the highest SAT scores in the nation for the past 6 years for states that have more than half the students being part of that, of taking the assessment. We've been in the top 3 on the American College Test. We have new career and technical opportunities that are blooming now because apprenticeships are open, skill centers are being built around the state. Our most struggling students have more opportunity than they've ever had in the history of this state. 94% of the students met the reading and the writing standards last August as part of their graduation requirement, and no student group was under 86% in terms of those pass rates. We have done this in our state without pushing kids out of the system. We still have dropouts. We have not conquered that problem, but we have not exacerbated the problem by the work that we've done to become more focused and intentional for our children. There's more personal attention, there's more academic success, and I would like the opportunity to serve for 4 more years to take us to the next level and solve some of the immediate challenges that we face. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Dorn, go ahead. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank Rotarians for inviting me here today. First of all, I think you need to know a little bit about me. I grew up in Puyallup. My dad was a used car salesman for 25 years, and the reason why I think he provided for my family and my brothers and sisters and a number of our extended family is he made a living by selling cars because he was brutally honest. And I inherited that. So there might be some things that I say today that might make you feel uncomfortable, and you're just getting a piece of Randy Dorn, that's all. You're getting a piece of Lloyd Dorn, too. My mom, she was pretty much a maverick in her day. I ought to gain some points by saying that, okay? But she took, when she was pregnant with me, she went to term a week before she had me on September 10th, 1953, and was an office manager at Sanitary Cloverleaf Dairy, and she was a long-time political activist, and so it was fun growing up in our household. After growing up in Puyallup and playing sports, I went to Olympic JC and worked myself through school as a custodian and playing sports. I would have loved to have gone to Wazoo, I would have loved to have gone to the U, but they said that my football prowess wasn't quite to their level. So I went to the University of Idaho and played sports and worked my way through. I was a 1st grade, 5th grade, 7th grade teacher, and then when I was 27, I became the youngest high school principal in the state of Washington. A lot of people in Washington didn't think I had the ability to be a high school principal because I'd never taught a day of high school in my life. But then I went on to Eatonville High School at 28 and became the youngest high school principal in the state of Washington. I believe that when you're a high school principal in a single high school community, you're the leader of your community in educational issues. And from that, I didn't think we were going the right direction. I was handing out diplomas, and I knew every kid in my high school. I knew their parents. And in the last couple of years, there were a couple kids I didn't sign their diploma because I didn't believe they were educated in reading, writing, and math. And it had to be something done. So I actually ran for the legislature. And the bill that she was talking about, 1209, I was the House Education Chair when that happened. And you know what? The teachers didn't want it. The principals didn't want it. The superintendents didn't want it. The religious right didn't want it. But business saw the future and technology changing things. We even had a part of the bill that actually said to communicate in a variety of ways. That was the final language. The first language was to communicate in technology in a variety of ways, but we couldn't get the bill passed if we said technology because kids would not learn how to write with paper and pencil. And look at how far we've come. I also want you to know what are my main things. Number 1, our assessment system must change, must be replaced. I didn't say the standards, I didn't say the ELERs, but the assessment, we've been at it 12 years and we got it wrong. It's way too long. Why do we test for 2 weeks when to take a bar exam it takes 2.5 days? It doesn't make sense to me. I can't answer that question to a 4th grade parent. 2, school funding has to be on a more needs basis per child, or at least by school, because you can have schools 8 miles away where you have a high-need school and a low-need school, high-poverty school, high-income school. Different clientele, you have to have funding that actually helps the individual student. Dropout rates, 29%. League of Education Voters says 30. My stuff says 29. Folks, we have a dropout problem. It's not gotten any better. We need to improve on that. If we lose that group, we end up paying for it at the end. Okay? And then career and technical education. That was part of 1209, career and technical education. And Terry got it a year ago and passed a law and some great things that she should be proud of. But why did it take 11 years? We had it in the bill, and we haven't done anything on that because not all the kids are going to go on to college. And the last one is early childhood education is your best investment possible on ending a number of things like dropouts,
And
things like that.
Okay, thank you. Time is up. All right, thank you so much for your opening statements. During this section, you will have 90 seconds to answer, and then the opponent will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. I want to go back to the WASL because that really seems to be the lightning rod right now in Washington education. I want, first of all, Dr. Bergeson, if you would, I want to know what's right with WASL and what needs to be changed with WASL as of today. Go ahead.
As of today, we have an assessment system that directly measures the standards, the academic standards in reading, writing, math, and science. Those are the 4 areas that we assess. It measures them well. It's gotten awards for being one of the top assessment systems in the country. What's wrong when No Child Left Behind passed, it required us to go from 4th, 7th, and 10th grade testing, which is what we did to get the school and student accountability measures, to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. So teachers are overburdened with the amount of testing. And as we get a new president and a new Department of Education, we're going to fix that. We have also, 2 years ago, because we had the added testing, I have reduced the size of the test, but that won't be in effect until this spring. But we've changed the amount of testing time by 1/3 of the testing time. The writing assessment is one of the few in the country that's a direct writing exam. This morning I was with the Asian executive directors in a meeting in Seattle talking about Asian and Pacific Island students and wanting to get the data which the community wants to know what are these external results. Instead of just grades, we now have a clear measure of progress. And while we don't like those results oftentimes, they guide our efforts to make the positive changes to reach the groups of children that we were talking about this morning at 7:30 down on Rainier Avenue. So we have an excellent system. I'd like to cut the time. We're going to cut the time this spring, but the quality of the exam is splendid.
And 30 seconds rebuttal.
Basically, the math was a disaster. The legislature had to force the OSPI office to change it. We don't have a graduation requirement in math and science after 12 years. It's only reading and writing. I support a standard at the 10th grade that kids have to go up, but let's make sure it's a fair standard. And we don't get the results back for 4 months. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to teachers and administrators and parents.
Okay, let's go back to the original question. What's right with WASL? What's wrong? You said you don't oppose assessment. Specifically, what is your plan? Give us 90 seconds.
And Terry, actually, I have a lot of respect for the work that Terry's done. Terry and I have we have a respect for each other. And I believe the writing part is essential because it's actual writing, okay? But in the math part, we have writing. And so if you're a student that's excellent in math computation, but you actually have to write it up, you can get the answer right, but your writing isn't up to the level that it should be, and you're a second language learner, you get marked down. I think it should be math computation, and that's what we should do. Every section, reading, writing, and math and science, has a writing section, which makes it very expensive, and you have to have it scored by a human being, an individual, what makes it very long to get it back. The assessment in 1209, I can read to you, the bill that I championed said the assessment should be a tool for students, parents, and teachers to be used as an educational tool to improve the learning of students and to build an individual program. The WASL only says whether you're at grade level or not, and it tells you that 4 months after the fact with a new teacher. Again, the public has said change, and we haven't changed.
And 30 seconds.
We have the ability with the WASL to look at the outcomes at the various grade levels. We also have diagnostic assessments that are being used by classroom teachers that are helping guide their instruction so they can make course corrections to make sure kids, when they get to the larger reading comprehension issues, are able to judge that. I don't want to go back to bubble sheets. That's what we got away from when we did this. We're measuring thinking and communication skills, and in particularly in mathematics, we just heard what Carl was talking about today, the complexity of our world. People need to understand and be able to communicate their ideas, whether it's reading, writing, or mathematics, or science.
Okay, let's go back to No Child Left Behind, and we'll start with you, Mr. Dorn, for 90 seconds. I live in a school district where 190 students have requested transfers under No Child Left Behind because the school didn't meet standards. And some of the critics say, even if you fail to meet one specific standard, let's say it's English as a second language, the entire school fails, and anyone in that school can ask for a transfer. What can we do about No Child Left Behind? Are we stuck with it? What can we do to work with it?
Okay. I also want to go back to the last question. It's interesting. My opponent touted bubble questions are bad, yet she touted the SAT as how well our students are doing, which is all bubble sheet almost. And so you got to have it one way or the other. I actually work for ETS, and it says right on the webpage, don't use this as a comparison between states because you have different clientele. No Child Left Behind, great idea, bad on paper. 1,300 pages. I read it once. As soon as I read it, I said, mathematically not possible. Do you understand that out of 113 school districts in the state that have over a student population of 2,000 students, 112 of them are on track to fail? So if these students want to go to another district and it's over 2,000, there's a good chance that district's failing also. And I got that stat from the superintendent of the Walla Walla School District just last week. And the other thing that's criminal is we are assessing special ed students at grade level equivalency, and they might be third grade readers, so we have a sixth grade test. And we're actually assessing these kids, and it's a big waste of time. It's destroying these kids, and this is something that Terry and I believe, totally agree on, that there's some real problems with No Child Left Behind.
Okay, rebuttal for 30.
Well, I have a white paper that's on my campaign website about the changes we need to make because the goal is great. It's the implementation of the accountability system that is too punitive and too narrowly focused and requires too much testing, and by the way, they don't pay for anything that they want us to do. So the feds are in our world as state and local school districts far more than they should be. And so the ability to make the changes in the assessment, I believe, will come with the new administration. And I have about 6 steps that are very clear. It would be very simple to change it and make it workable. And the 2 groups of kids that I'm most worried about are kids with severe disabilities and our English language learners that are being asked to be tested inappropriately under this. And
so I'll let you go ahead with your 90-second answer right now. Okay. What can we do to change No Child Left Behind?
Good.
Is it a federal fix? Is it a local fix?
It really has to be a federal fix, first of all. There's the Congress and the Department of Education together are going to need to be involved in this fix. The first thing that needs to happen is this uniform bar. When Frank Schrantz and I co-chaired the early accountability, we had a continuous improvement model in Washington State. Mabton was compared to its own baseline. So if they started with 20% of the kids meeting the reading standard, they had to make a 25% improvement in a 3-year period of time. They were not compared to Mercer Island. Mercer Island might have been at 85%, but they had to make a 25% improvement. So everybody had to pay attention. So we ought to go back to a continuous improvement model that doesn't do one size fits all for the whole state. Fix the testing for English language learners and kids with disabilities. Very straightforward ways to do that. Look at the amount of testing that's required. We need to have more screening and diagnostic at grade levels other than 4, 7, and 10. That needs to be fixed by Congress because that's part of the legislation. And we need to put the resources out there to support the children who need the most help on the legislation. The real underlying problem that bothers me, and as I have fought with the Department of Education for 6 years, is that we are destroying the concept of meaningful accountability with this legislation. It is unfair when there are 37 yeses that you have to earn by groups of kids in reading and math, And if you get one no, you are then on the track to be a failing school. So the most struggling schools that have made huge progress get no credit for that under this, and the ones that blow it off don't have to pay attention to it until now we're getting closer and closer to the wire. That means good people think it's a stupid law, and therefore the whole concept of accountability is undermined, and we need accountability that is meaningful.
30-second rebuttal.
Okay, first of all, I'm running for Superintendent of Public Education for the state of Washington, okay? And I want to fix the state of Washington. We have friends in Congress that's their job to fix No Child Left Behind. Your Senator Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, who I both served with in the legislature, and a number of congressmen that I've served with, I will work with them. But my job is to fix the assessment system in the state of Washington.
Okay, I want to move on briefly. Let's go to 1-minute answers, Larry, if we could, just to kind of speed things along. Some people say that the way we fund schools right now is broken. We rely heavily on levies, which can vary in the lid level from district to district. What can we do to fix, in the minds of those who think it's broken, fix the funding formula for Washington schools? And let's start out with Mr. Dorn.
Okay, first of all, in 1978 is when we did the Basic Ed Act and when we shifted more to the state paying and levies paying less, and it was to make it more equitable. But as the years went by, some changes happened in our school system. Things like technology. We never funded technology in our school system. And today, if you ask parents, is technology part of Basic Ed? And I bet you they'd say yes. Is school safety part of Basic Ed? And they'd probably say yes. And we fund it on a per pupil basis. We need to fund on a need basis because some schools will be much more needy and need more resources. We're too dependent on local levies. We have to change that. I've worked with a coalition, principals, superintendents, teachers, school board members, and PSC. We have a coalition together. That was the first time a coalition of those people got together in a room and want to move forward and let the citizens of the state understand that education funding has moved in the wrong direction in the state of Washington.
Okay, let's go with a 1-minute response.
The funding system in the state of Washington is an input-based model, and we need to shift it to an output-based model. When the Governor's Education Reform and Funding Committee made their proposals, they had an F in their thing. It was education reform and funding. They didn't do the F. Any teacher in the state will tell you that. The funding part didn't happen because no one really believed we would do the reform in the first place. We are focused now on the results of students' learning, and we gather evidence about that, and we have not moved the funding system in the direction of supporting students who need extra time. Randy mentioned that earlier, the student that is struggling and will need extra resources. We have not looked at the funding of compensation and the development of teachers. Their world has changed dramatically in the last decade. We don't support them properly with the kind of performance-based compensation system that is fair, but that is rewarding their increased knowledge and skills, and we don't do the foundation funding for the districts to keep the lights on and get the kids to school and feed them. So we've got to change the sort of theory of action of the budget, and I have made a proposal to the Basic Ed Finance Task Force Committee to do exactly that.
Okay, this is the Mark Wright lightning round, kind of like Jeopardy. We're going to change the rules basically on the fly a little bit. 30-second responses, please. The teachers' union, some say, is an obstacle to improving education in that it prevents schools from firing ineffective teachers and administrators and opposes things like merit pay for top-performing teachers. Your thoughts? 30 seconds.
Well, the WA doesn't love me much anymore, but I do still love the WA. I used to be the president of it, and I was just with 9 incredible teachers at the Teacher of the Year conference. The teachers are the most important ingredient in the classroom, period. And teachers are the WA. And teachers want support. They want to have better compensation. The way we define pay may be very interesting, but they want more of it, and they want it to make sense, and they want the resources they need to reach children in the classroom. And that is my top priority for the next 4 years.
Is the union impeding reform?
Yeah, I think the union at this point is doing too much on accountability and not enough, too much against accountability and for money, and I think it needs to be a combination of both.
Okay, Randy, same question. Is the teachers' union an obstacle?
It's one of the obstacles to change. Nobody wants to get off their seat and do something different. And that's what we're asking education to do. And I want people to know if you're going to be an institution or a business in the future, you better have 3 words in mind: innovation, quality, and efficiency. And if you're not about that, you're going to go away. And I have a son that's a teacher, And he can't understand why somebody just down the hall gets paid a lot more than him, and he's busting his tail and doing a lot better job. These younger people in a culture are going to change our culture, and it's going to happen faster than you think.
Okay, one more lightning round question, 30-second response, please. The dropout rate, almost 1 in 3 students doesn't graduate in Washington. How can we keep them in schools? And if we do get them back in school, won't it make it harder to meet WASL standards? 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I want to bring up a stat. I want to bring up a stat that Terry brought up. She said 92%, 94% of our kids are meeting WASL standard and graduating. How could that be? You contradicted her. How could that be? Because she's only talking about seniors, and if you get to your senior year, she left off the other 21% that aren't making it. Let's be honest with kids' lives. Let's not spin kids' lives, and it's going to take more resources to get those kids to the finish line.
Okay, the dropout rate.
Well, I'm glad Randy went to the correct number from 30% to 21%, which is the accurate number that we have. You get kids to stop dropping out. One, the numbers aren't up, but they haven't gone down enough. You get them by joining forces with community people like I was with this morning, doing excellent teaching, having respect for children by the educators so that the children know there's a high expectation and that they are welcome in that school and that their families are welcome. You join forces with the community and the school and the classroom teacher, and with the kids that we keep, that are kids that are doing extremely well, but we have to engage them. A number of kids who have dropped out have passed all the tests. They just aren't engaged in school, and we have to change that.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to your questions in the audience. Please raise your hand. The mic handlers are going to come out. The super lightning round as we get the mics in place. Year-round schooling, yes or no?
Choice, locally.
Yes or no?
I'd say choice, but I encourage that kids actually go to school 180 days and don't have half days through the year.
Okay, should the U.S. adopt a national curriculum? Yes, no?
No.
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right, your questions now. Who has a question in the audience? Todd?
Charter schools.
Okay, let's go with 60 seconds on charter schools.
Well, I nearly lost an election supporting charter schools. I still like charter schools, but our state doesn't like them because we voted them down 3 different times. But we do have an increasing number of wonderful alternative schools that don't have a different governing structure, but they're schools operating within the public schools, and they're doing an excellent job. We just did an evaluation of the highest performing alternatives. The alternative schools are changing in the face of accountability. Some of them are going out of business because they've just been loving kids and not teaching them. Others have changed their business and are becoming schools of choice in the district.
Okay, charter schools.
Charter schools. I also want to finish another answer on dropout. Get students involved in DECA, FFA, music, band, and also student activities. That's what helps kids stay in school. On the alternatives with charter schools, public charter schools, I think, are great, and we have them in academies. We have them in alternative high schools. We also have Running Start. Running Start was the greatest thing we did. Great bang for the buck, and it made competition in schools, and we have more AP courses today than ever before because we created competition. It made a big difference.
Okay, next question.
My question is a follow-up question on school finance, and it has to do with bringing greater clarity to the process and also simplifying the process. Are either of you prepared to make request legislation this session to bring both clarity and simplicity to the school budget process?
My proposal... Oh.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
No, that's okay. This is
in.
live. You're on.
The answer is yes. The proposal that I made does a much more open breakdown of the allocation of the dollars to the district, so you actually can see class size as it is versus having something that's called a certificated instructional staff ratio that includes about 14 categories of people. It drives the money out on an allocation basis, but it will also change the accounting system so that you'll know what money was sent to a district, and we're proposing changing the accounting system so you can see what the district chooses to do with that money. I don't want to tie their hands, but I want people to be able to look at the results of the decisions the district made against a very clear funding model, and yes, indeed, we will have legislative language in the month of November put together to propose that.
Okay, 60.
Yeah, this is a distinct difference between Terry and myself. I work with a coalition of folks. She did it in her office. She sits on, if you want to get the state proposal, it's at the Washington State Institute for Public Policy. They just came out with their proposal, okay? I want you to know that over 54 current legislators, they will be back there next year, have endorsed my campaign and said, we want Randy Dorn to lead us. They are Republicans, Democrats. They're from Eastern Washington, Northeast Washington, Seattle, Southwest Washington, Northwest Washington. Terry has less than 10. It's time for a change. You have to bring the people in the room, everybody in the room, and you got to get them to work together.
Okay. Do you want to rebut?
What was the question originally?
Well, now let's move on.
Yeah, no, I'm
Next
not bothering
question. That's
rebutting
okay.
on that
Don't worry
one.
about it. I couldn't remember either.
Okay.
I have a specific question about math pedagogy. I have 3 children in the Bellevue schools. One is a freshman at Newport High School. At back-to-school night, the math teacher told me, who has no background as a math teacher, told me that self-esteem is more important than the right answer. So where do you stand on connected math versus Saxon math?
Okay, Mr. Dorn, 60 seconds.
Okay, actually, where's the math folks? Have backed my campaign tremendously. They're at the University of Washington, they're at night football games, and they want more math computation in the early grades. I do too. We went to this fuzzy math, we went to discovery math. It was a philosophy of OSPI, and it was wrong. They got math wrong. That's why it has to change. Unfortunately, we're not changing fast enough, and we can't lose another decade of kids.
60 seconds.
On the contrary, we aren't losing kids. I have to own the math standards and assessment problem when we didn't have the graduation rate for that test where it was. And I've taken a lot of heat, and the buck stops here. However, we have new math standards, K through 12. They are much more balanced. About 22, 25 years ago, people were realizing we were just teaching math facts and algorithms, and we weren't doing application and reasoning and mathematics. So the whole nation went in a direction that went too far, and we lost, on the three-legged stool, we lost the math facts end. We kept the reasoning and problem solving and the application, but that's not good enough. Now we've got the balance back, and we just did an evaluation of the curriculum. Connected Math came down 6. I've chosen the top 2, Holt and a thing called Math Connects. The Connected Math program did not make the cut in terms of the ranking of the programs, nor, however, did Saxon, because it's too computation-oriented, it's too unbalanced the other way. And we have a very excellent analysis that's going to make a dramatic change in support for teachers and kids.
Okay, I appreciate the questions from the floor. That brings us to our time for closing arguments. Again, by the flip of the coin, Terry Bergeson, you'll go first. In closing, you'll have 90 seconds.
Okay. Our country is at a huge turning point. And I want another 4 years to take us from the foundation that we've built of solid accountability in the core academic areas to move us forward into an area that strengthens that accountability, brings the kids back in that we've lost so that we take care of the achievement gap and the dropout problems, that we straighten out what we've done in school finance, and that's going to take us a decade now because now we know how to solve it and we don't have any money. So we're going to have to look at our priorities very, very carefully when we go into Olympia this year. We also have huge new breakthroughs in STEM high school, science, technology, engineering, and math. That's our future. Literacy combined with these skills, and students that we graduated this last year were the best prepared class we have ever graduated in the history of Washington State. But we're nowhere near where we need to be to understand and face the citizenship issues, the financial issues, the career issues of the 21st century. I have a lot of energy, and I do not want to walk away when we're just at this tipping point and let someone take this whole system apart. We're going to go to the next level, and I would love your support to re-elect me for another term as state superintendent. That'll be it for me. I'll be term limited. I'll just say it out loud to this whole crowd because I get that question a lot. But in this next 4 years, believe me, if I win this election, I don't owe anybody anything. And I have a lot of people that are upset, a lot of people that are happy. I have thousands of teachers working across the state to help me that want us to keep our standards and accountability. They don't want to start over. They want to take the next step, and I would very much like your support to take the lead on making that happen in the state of Washington. I'm very proud of our education system, and I thank you for the chance to be here today.
Okay, thank you very much. Randy Dorn, 90 seconds, please.
I want to be clear to everybody. I believe in public schools. I've been in public schools for 50 years of my 55 years. Every September I've stepped forward and tried to make a difference in kids' lives. I know my opponent said that I didn't get it right. What I said is that she said 92%, 8% drop out in their senior year, and there's another 21% that don't get counted because they drop out in their 9th, 10th, and 11th grade year, which actually equals to 29%, which I said. I want you to know that I care deeply about this office, and I also hold great respect for my opponent that's had to go and fought some wars and scars, and so did I during 1209, and making a difference for kids. And I was not able to solve the funding problem because I was a very moderate to conservative Democrat in southeast Pierce County. When 94 came, the wave of 94, I got voted out of office. I didn't get to finish the work that needed to be done. Legislators are asking for me to come back. But one thing that should be off limits in a political campaign, and I hope it was an over-exuberant campaign person in Terry's campaign, but they sent out a fundraising letter and said in the letter that I was anti-public school. Now, that's fair game. It's a hardball thing. But when it bothers my wife so much, as she has dedicated her life to be an educator, 2 of my sons have decided to be educators, and people are saying that their father or their husband is not dedicated to education. That's just wrong.
Well, I appreciate both of you being here today. Thank you so much, and let's give a warm welcome, or a warm round of applause, I should say, to both the candidates, Terry Bergeson, Randy Dorn. Thank you very much. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy.
Thank you, Mark. We are so lucky to have you as a member of this club. You've done another great job. Thank you, Terry and Randy, for not only being here, but sharing your views, but also for taking a stand on these very important issues. As we look towards solving the challenges that are ahead of us, there is no better investment than in educating the leaders of tomorrow. And with the messes that we've created, it's the least we can do. Welcome, Robert and Stephen. We're so glad to have you in the club. Next week, October 15th, we will be meeting at the Red Lion. Our main speaker will be Lee Kong Phong, Vietnamese ambassador to the United States. And for our short program, we will welcome back to our podium auctioneers Dick and Sharon Friel, who have happily taken your money for the last many years, and over 30 years, in fact, have supported local charities. They have run over 2,600 auctions. So they will be here to tell you and share with you the high points and the low points of auctions in Seattle. Thank you all for coming. We will see you next week. We are adjourned.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.